In the case of Taiwan, there are a couple of reasons why we're particularly interested to understand grey zone better. For one thing, most analysts believe that a full-scale conventional war on Taiwan is not the most likely development to occur in the short term. Rather, what we'll see is more and more intense grey zone pressure on Taiwan. But where does this whole idea of grey zone come from? It came out of the 2014 approach to the takeover of Crimea by Russia and then the war that began in eastern Ukraine in Donbass. This was characterized by unattributable and ambiguous actions, also actions that achieve a kind of blame shifting onto the victim, demonstrating the weakness of the victim in the eyes of their own people, but also their foreign supporters. There are some particular aspects of Taiwan's experience that are interesting. First of all, it goes to this question about whether the grey zone is an alternative to conventional war or a kind of preparatory stage coming up to the launching of a conventional attack. If it's an alternative to war, then the kind of subversion and interference that Taiwan's experiencing could be aimed at achieving unification without a full-scale conventional attack. On the other hand, if it's a form of preparation for war, then it might help observers to estimate when or how that war could happen and foresee ways to deter it. So what can we learn from understanding this experience of grey zone pressure and how to push back? One thing the report goes into is all grey zone action is not the same. You can think of a light grey and dark grey forms of grey zone approach. In the case of the dark grey, you calculate that the risk of escalation is justified because even though it's a risk you prefer to avoid, the failure to act would mean accepting irreversible damage. We saw an example of this when a ship dragging an anchor was suspected of sabotaging an undersea cable around Taiwan. The Taiwanese authorities took the course of legal measures, arresting, detaining the captain and crew. This is a form of dark grey response because it could achieve really serious damage to Taiwan's position. Investor confidence in Taiwan as a global IT hub could be dampened by this kind of cable cutting incidents if they become more frequent. On the other hand, what you could call light grey responses are less direct and symmetrical. You might look at ways to mitigate the effect of this kind of grey zone approach by building resilience, or you might look at ways to flip the narrative by framing the grey zone attack in a way that casts blame on the perpetrator. For example, the Philippines has a transparency campaign which shows Chinese Coast Guard vessels blasting small boats with water cannon. Where Chinese action looks like a preparation for war, Taiwan might use examples of this to establish a narrative of China as the aggressor. Dark grey actions confront the problem head-on, imposing direct costs and affecting denial, while accepting a calculated risk of escalation. Light grey options instead aim to flip the narrative, exhibiting resilience as proof of government competence, thereby shoring up domestic cohesion, at the same time shining a light on events from an angle that casts the shadow of blame on the aggressor.